Hello everyone. In this video, I am going to explain two important concepts in Java: hashcode method and equals method. When to override these. These two are very important from the interview perspective also. So in this video, we will go into detail and we will understand these two important concepts in Java. Okay. See the outer rectangle which contains all these small rectangles. You can think like this. We will take an example of hashset and we will see how hashset prevents the duplicates. Generally, many of people think that hashset prevent duplicates by its own, but it is wrong. Hashset internally uses the equals method to find out whether the object you are going to add is already there in the hash set. So the equals method plays an important role in finding the duplicates by hash set. If you don't override the equals, hash set cannot understand when two objects need to be considered as equal. But generally people add the strings into hash set, and since it will prevent duplicates, you will assume that hashset automatically prevents the duplicates, but it is not. In the string class, equals method is already overridden. That's why hashset internally uses that logic, the logic contained in the equals method, to find out if two strings are equal or not. Equals method will just have the logic when to consider two strings as equal. If the contents of two strings are equal, the equals method in the string class return true. If the contents are not equal, the equals method return false. So hashset uses this logic whenever you are going to add a new string. It will call the equals method and checks if there is any existing string with the same content. If it is there, it will prevent the duplicate. So hashset internally uses the logic you have given in the equals method. So that is the reason whenever you add the strings, it will prevent the duplicates. But let us see this. First we will discuss or see the topic just we now discussed. I have added three strings. Since there are two duplicate strings, hashset will prevent duplicates. Can you see? Only one string with Anil is added because hashset used the logic given in the string class. String class is the one given by the sun. So they have already overridden the equals method such that whenever two strings contain the equal content, the equals method return true. So hashset could prevent the duplicates in this case. Let us see if hashset can prevent the same thing in case of user defined objects. Let us see, there are three employees objects, but two employees are having the same name. Let us see if hashset prevents duplicates. Can you see? Hashset did not prevent the two employees with the same name. Actually, in your project you may have the requirement that whenever two employees are having the same name, they are considered to be equal and you should not allow them into the set. You have to treat it as duplicate, but in this case hashset is not able to prevent because hashset is not having any information when to consider two employee objects as equal. Okay, so you have to override the equals method in the employee TO and inform that when two employees are having the same name, then those should be considered as equal. Then hashset uses that equals and prevents the duplicates. Okay, before that, before seeing that, we will go into details how hashset prevents duplicates. There is another method called hashcode. Simply overriding the equals method is not only enough. We will see the relationship between these hashcode and equals method. Let us see. Whenever you add or trying to add one object into the hashset, what it does is it will call the hashcode method. Okay, then it is something like some number. So assume it is 1. Then what will happen is hashset places that object into 1. Suppose if the object you are trying to add returns the hashcode 2, then that object will be placed in the, assume these small rectangles like a container. This container can hold multiple objects. So internally, hashing related collections spread the objects you are going to add across multiple containers. Remember, each container can hold multiple objects. This container can hold multiple objects. This second container can hold multiple objects. But remember, this entire thing is just only one hashset. Don't think this is one hashset, this is one hashset. Internally, hashset stores the objects across multiple containers. So remember these two important rules. Whenever you are trying to add an object into hashset, the hashset calls the hashcode from your object. Suppose if you are trying to add the employee object, the hashset calls the hashcode method, and suppose if it returns 1, then that object will be placed in first container. Remember, every container can hold multiple objects. Suppose if you are trying to add the second employee object, if it returns 2, that object will be placed here. So the employees you are added may be distributed among any of the containers based on the hashcode return. If the hashcode return is 6, that employee object will be stored in the 6th container. But sometimes what will happen is if two employees return the same hashcode, what will happen? Those two will land into the same container. Suppose if employee 1 and employee 5 returns the same hashcode, then those two objects will land into the same container. That is the reason I am saying that a container can hold multiple objects. Now we will see the relationship between the equals and hashcode. Concentrate carefully. Suppose assume like this. In your project, if the name of two employees are equal, then those objects should be treated as same. So you should prevent adding two employee objects with the same name into the hashset. Suppose if employee 1 is having the name Hari, and if another employee is also having the same name Hari, then we should not allow adding second object with the same name into the hashset. Okay, as I said, whenever we are trying to add the object, hashset calls the hashcode and places that object into that container. But in my example, there are two employees with the same name Hari. Actually, the hashset should prevent adding the duplicate employee object. But if you don't override the hashcode such that those two return the same hash code, then what will happen is, suppose when you call the hash code on the first employee object, and if it returns 1, it will land into the first container. If you call the hash code on the second employee which is having the same name, okay, it will land into another container. That is wrong. We should prevent this happen. So to prevent this, what we have to do is, for two objects which are considered equal, then we should return the same hash code. Then what will happen is, suppose if the first object returns 1, and we have to write logic such that two equal objects return the same hash code, then what will happen is, when you are trying to add the second employee, it will also return 1. You have to write logic such that equals object return the same hash code. So then hashset try to add it into the first container only, but it will see that there is an object already with the same name Hari using the equals method. So hashset add the objects in 2 steps. Whenever you are trying to add an object, first it will call the hashcode method and try, and before placing that object into that container, it will check if there are any objects already using equals method. I am repeating, the hashset before adding, first what it will perform is, first it will call the hashcode method on the object you are trying to add. That is first step. And suppose if the hashcode returned is 2, then it won't directly add into the second container. It will perform another step also. What is the second step is, it will check if there are any duplicate object already using equals method. If it finds any duplicate, it won't add the object into that. If it doesn't find any duplicate object using equals, then it will add. So you can now understand it more. So if two equal objects doesn't return the same hash code, then what will happen? If the first suppose assume 2 employee objects, if they are equal based on name, our requirement is that if 2 objects have the same name, those are should be considered duplicate, and hashset should prevent it. But assume if you do not override the hash code such that it returns the same hash code for equal objects. Suppose first employee object with the name Hari returned 1, then what will happen? It will go to the first container, and it will, before adding, it will check if there are any objects with the name Hari. It won't find, so it will be added to the first container. Then hash code will be called on the second Hari object, Hari employee object. If since it is not written the same hash code, what will happen? Suppose if the hash code written is 2, then it will go to 2, and before adding it will check if there are any objects using equals method. Then what will happen? Since there is no Hari object in this container, it will try to add, but this is a problem, right? First Hari is added here and second Hari is added here, but since this is the hash set, since this is the big rectangle is the hash set, it should not allow equal objects even in different containers. It should not allow. So what we have to do, we have to override the hash code such that it returns the same hash code value. Then what will happen? When first employee Hari entered first container, when we are trying to add the second array, it will also return the same hash code. Then what hashset generally perform, it will see if there are any duplicate object using equals method, then it will find. If you don't override hash code, then it will be added to the second container. If you override such that it returns the same hash code, then hashset immediately finds that there is another employee object already using equals method, so it can prevent. So that is the reason two employee objects, if two employee objects are equal according to equals method, then hash code returned for those two objects should be same. Now we will see by an example. See, since it is not preventing duplicates, what we have to do, we have to override the equals method. I have already written code for that. What I have written, if this object name, if the name in this object is equal to name in the second object, then I am returning true. That means these two objects are equal. If names are not equal, then those two employees are not equal. Let us see if hashset prevents duplicates. Can you tell whether it will prevent duplicates or not? Everyone, if you understand the concept, you will say that it won't prevent duplicates. Can you see? Hashset could not prevent the duplicates. This is because, as I already said, if you don't override the hash code for two equal objects to return the same value, here you have overridden the equals method, but you did not overridden the hash code. Then what will happen, that even though two objects are equal, it will return the different hash code. It will use the hash code, default hash code, which will give the different values for different employee objects. But so what will happen, the first employee object will return one hash code and that will go here, and if the second object, employee object, will go to another container. So now what we will do is, we will override the hash code such that it returns the, can you see, I am generating the same hash code based on name. So whenever the employees, two employees are having the same name, then it will return the same hash code. Then what will happen, suppose if I am trying to add two employee objects, first remember these two steps mandatorily. Whenever you try to add the hashset, first hashset calls the hash code method. So for the hurry, assume it returned 1, then it will be added to the first container. But before adding, it will check if there are any equal objects. Since this is the first hurry object, there is no pre-existing object, so it will add. For the second hurry object, now what we have done, the hash code will be same, because for the second employee also name is same. It will return the same hash code. Then it will try to add the second employee object into the same container. But what will happen, before adding, you know that it will check, the hashset will check if there are any equal object using equals method. Since the names are equal, it will understand that there is already an employee, duplicate employee with the same name. So hashset will prevent duplicates. So we will run now and we will check. Can you see? Now hashset prevented duplicates because we have overridden the equals and hash code. I will summarize what I have said. Whenever you add or whenever you try to add an object into the hashset first calls hash code of that object. Then if that hash code value is 2, the object will be added to 2. But even before adding, it will perform another step. First it will check if there are any objects, duplicate objects using equals. If there are no equal objects, then only that object will be added. Remember, so whenever you try to add an object, first the hash code will be method of that object will be called, and the container will be found, and if it is 2, it will be placed in 2. But remember, before placing, it will check if there is any object, that is duplicate object, using the equals method. Even for retrieving also the same thing happens. Whenever you give some object and ask if it is contained in the hashset, what it will do is it will call the hash code on that object. And remember, two non-equal methods can have the same hash code sometimes. That is the reason when you give an object and ask the hashset to find if that object is not there, first it will call the hash code and go to that container, and it won't give the object directly because there will be multiple objects. Then it will check the correct object based on equals, because sometimes what happens is two objects which are not equal also may return the same hash code. That is the reason whenever you ask the hashset if the object is there or not in the hashset, it will perform two steps. First it will call the hash code and it will check the right object based on equals method. Suppose there are 3 employee objects, assume one is Hari, one is Sriram, one is Rajesh. If you ask Hari, then it will go one by one and calls equal method, and which object returns true, that object will be returned, because there is a possibility that two objects can have the same hash code. So finally, if two objects are equal, it should return the same hash code. But even two objects which are not equal can have the same hash code. That is the reason whenever you want to find something hash code, go to that container using the hash code and then fix the right object using the equals method. You may think that why the object which is not equal can be stored in the same container. Actually, the idea of hashing is to spread the objects across the containers, so that whenever you ask something, instead of searching all the elements one by one, we can go to the right container with hash code and find the object using equals. Hope you understand. Thank you.